As an avid reader, I'm always intrigued about how a book, either fiction or nonfiction, winds up on, say, the New York Times bestseller list. It's not always easy to have the craft of being a writer. I know several of them who get those not nice letters from publishing houses or magazines of rejection. But upon further investigation, people who are successful were rejected initially. A quote to a famous writer who sold 300 million books in his lifetime. The people felt that his books were too different for other juveniles on the market to warrant its selling. That was written to Dr. Seuss. Again, went on to sell 300 million copies of his books. Another book that received 15 rejections. The people wrote, "The girl doesn't, it seems to me, have a special perception of feeling which would lift the book above the curiosity level." That was written to people who wanted the Diary of Anne Frank to be published. 15 rejections, and then it's read by millions throughout the world. And finally, what do you think is an absurd story as a romance, melodrama, or record of New York high life? The great American novel, The Great Gatsby, written by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Rejected, now still read to this very day. Why do people reject things? Maybe it's not the right time. It's the humanity. However, in our sacred scriptures today, we hear about many people who reject the voice of John the Baptist and ultimately and more tragically, the voice of Jesus Christ. I speak of the Pharisees and the scholars of the law. They rejected the plan of God for themselves. Why is that? Well, the Pharisees followed the Mosaic law. Nothing wrong with that. They knew God in that way, but through the words of the prophets like Isaiah, they were preparing for a time there would be a more rigorous instruction in the ways of holiness. Not just the external observation of the law and the dictates of Mosaic teaching, but a more thorough interior spirituality. They were being prepared through the words of the prophets and John, the culmination of prophecy, and then the glorious revelation found in Jesus Christ, the fullness of mercy, love, and compassion of God, of which Isaiah says so beautifully in our first reading today, that God's love shall never leave you, nor his covenant of peace be shaken. The Pharisees were so afraid of that because it called them to be transformed by God. They were challenged to go deeper, to be humble, and have their interior holiness surpassed merely by following the law. It's a time where we can take the posture of John the Baptist these Advent days. Advent is a time of the desert. It's a time for us to see what's happening in the desert. It is a place of simplicity and poverty, where reality is faced. It's a time to get back to basics. What does God want us to see? Obviously, he wants us to accept the teachings of the kingdom of God, not to reject God's plan. And what is God's plan? We celebrate it in a mere 10 days, friends. God's plan is that he sent his son Jesus Christ among us as a fully human, fully divine being to break down the walls that separate us from our brothers and sisters and from the Father, Son, and Spirit. That is God's plan. Are we ready to enter into that mystery, the depth of God's mercy and love for you and for me? What do we see? Do we see the kingdom as we look around the desert days of Advent? Are we prepared to welcome the new order of life at Christmas time? What is God's plan for you today? What has drawn you here to tune into this Eucharist that gives life to our world, life to our souls? Are we going to be strong in our discipleship like John, who was not swayed by public opinion? We as followers of Jesus Christ are oftentimes tempted to abandon the gospel of life. Can we live in simplicity of life? Can we be prophetic voices that can prepare the way for the Lord each day of our lives, of Advent, of Christmas, and every day beyond? Let's have blessed days in the times ahead, my friends. May we not reject the words of Jesus Christ, but accept them, have wonderful relationships with him, the Spirit, and the Father, and come to glory in his birth in a mere few days.